are you?
Well, thank you so much.
How are you getting on?
You okay?
Look how smart he
I'm
is.
so smart.
He's very smart.
You're matching.
Yeah, exactly.
You put a lot of thought into that.
What have you been doing?
What have you been doing?
We went to the photograph auction.
And you sold, you were a bit of a beast at raffle ticket selling when we had the...
Imagine this. Catherine, the Princess of Wales, standing in the middle of a glittering diplomatic reception, and a Saudi prince presents her with a necklace that could buy a mansion. We're talking about the Rose of Jeddah, a pink diamond centerpiece, 20 carats, surrounded by smaller diamonds and delicate white gold filigree. The whole thing worth over £2 million sterling, 0 pence. Now, most people would be stunned, speechless, just looking at it, but Catherine? She didn't just admire it, she turned it down. And this wasn't some random snub. It was a graceful move that sent whispers through royal circles and headlines around the world. Because this gift wasn't just sparkly, it was political. In Saudi tradition, lavish presents like this are about more than generosity. They're a symbol of respect, prestige, and often they carry an unspoken expectation of closeness or favor. So Catherine's decision to say no wasn't just about personal taste. It was about balancing royal duty and global diplomacy. One wrong move and she could have looked entitled or compromised. But here's what makes this story even more fascinating. She didn't just decline the necklace and move on. She turned the entire moment into something more meaningful without insulting the prince or the tradition behind the gift. To understand just how bold this move was, we have to go back to the moment that box was opened.
You put on sort of brave-faced stoicism through treatment. Treatment's done.
Yes.
So I can crack on and get back to normal again, but actually the phase afterwards is really, is a really difficult journey.
So let's talk about what exactly Catherine turned down, because this wasn't just a necklace. This was the Rose of Jeddah, one of the rarest and most valuable pieces anyone in the royal circle had ever been offered. At the center of it all was a 20-carat pink diamond, the kind that's nearly impossible to find. Pink diamonds make up less than 0.1% of all diamonds in the world, and this one came from the Argyle mine in Australia, which has since shut down. That makes it even more rare and even more expensive. Experts value the necklace at well over £2 million sterling, 0 pence. But it wasn't just the stone that made it stand out. The necklace itself was custom designed by a Parisian jeweler, someone known for working with royalty and global elite. The design pulled from traditional Saudi architecture with delicate arches, star-like patterns, and layers of white gold filigree that wrapped around the diamond like a lace cage. Every single element was placed with intention, from the cut of each smaller diamond to the way the centerpiece caught the light like a desert sunset trapped in a gem. It was a statement of power, wealth, and respect. A piece like this wasn't just a gift. It was meant to honor Catherine's elegance and to symbolize the growing relationship between the UK and Saudi Arabia. But here's the thing, this wasn't just about sparkle and glam. In Saudi culture, a gift like this speaks volumes. Lavish presents like the Rose of Jeddah aren't unusual in Middle Eastern diplomacy. They're part of a tradition that dates back centuries. Hospitality, generosity, and prestige are all wrapped into the act of giving. For royals and heads of state, receiving something this grand can signal trust, a desire for stronger ties, or even future expectations. And this isn't the first time gifts like this have crossed royal hands. Queen Elizabeth famously received diamond pieces from Gulf leaders during her reign. Even Princess Diana in the early 80s was given a full sapphire suite by a Saudi crown prince during a tour. In those days, it was normal for royals to accept them, but times have changed. Saudi Arabia has faced global criticism over its human rights record, particularly in recent years. So for Catherine, accepting a multi-million-pound necklace from a Saudi prince wouldn't just raise eyebrows, it could spark serious backlash, both politically and publicly. There's also royal protocol to consider. Since 2003, the royal family has followed updated guidelines that suggest caution when receiving extravagant gifts. The idea is to avoid anything that might look like a bribe or come with strings attached. Accepting something as valuable as the Rose of Jeddah could open the door to questions about influence or obligation, and that's something the palace works hard to avoid. Picture it, a gilded reception hall, soft golden lighting, crystal chandeliers glinting overhead, diplomats and royals mingling, their conversations quieting as the Saudi prince approached with a small velvet box in his hands. There was a quiet energy in the room. Everyone knew what was about to happen. Catherine stood there, calm and graceful in a deep emerald gown. When the box was opened, the Rose of Jeddah sparkled under the lights like it was glowing. You could almost feel the weight of the moment. She leaned forward, admiring the craftsmanship, her expression soft but clear. "This is truly exquisite," she said, her tone warm, sincere. "The detail is remarkable." But then she gently pivoted. Instead of accepting the necklace, she shifted the focus and said, "What touches me most is the spirit of your country's traditions. I'd be honored to accept something that reflects that heritage." It was a perfectly worded moment, a refusal that didn't feel like rejection. And it worked. The prince smiled, understanding her intent immediately. With a simple nod, he signaled to one of his aides, who stepped forward with a second gift, a hand-woven silk shawl dyed in deep indigo and embroidered with traditional Saudi motifs, palm fronds, desert roses, and tiny gold threads running through the fabric. This wasn't some backup plan or consolation prize. The shawl was rich in cultural meaning, handcrafted by artisans from Al-Azza, representing a part of Saudi heritage that's deeply respected. Catherine's face lit up as she touched the fabric, clearly moved by its detail and symbolism. She accepted it with grace and later even wore it at a private event, sending a clear message of mutual respect. Now, here's the part that really sealed the moment, and honestly, it was classic Catherine. After gracefully turning down the Rose of Jeddah and choosing the silk shawl instead, she didn't just leave it there. She responded with a gift of her own that carried just as much meaning but without the flash. She sent the Saudi prince a pair of sterling silver cufflinks, custom made by a jeweler in London's Hatton Garden, a district famous for handcrafted luxury and old-world craftsmanship. But these weren't just any cufflinks. They were engraved with a Celtic knot, a design that dates back centuries in British and Irish history. Now, at first glance, that might seem simple, but there's meaning behind it. The Celtic knot represents eternity, unity, and interconnection. There's no beginning or end in its loop, just continuous, flowing lines that symbolize unbreakable bonds. And in the context of this gift, that was no accident. It reflected exactly what Catherine was trying to build. A connection, not just between two people, but between two cultures. And it wasn't just the design. The cufflinks were made by artisans whose families have worked with silver for generations. The detailing was elegant, just refined British craftsmanship, which in its own way sent a quiet message about heritage, tradition, and mutual respect. But perhaps the most powerful part wasn't even the cufflinks themselves. It was the note that came with them. Catherine included a handwritten message expressing her appreciation for the prince's generosity and his hospitality. But more than that, she wrote about her hope for continued friendship between their countries. That small gesture made the whole exchange feel personal. It wasn't just royal to royal, it felt human. That kind of sincerity sticks with people. According to insiders, the prince was genuinely moved, and not just by the cufflinks, but by the thoughtfulness behind the entire moment.
It's nice coming back to Wales because close to the first, it's where we lived before, we had our family and everything, so.
There's a reason this moment blew up the way it did. Catherine's choice didn't happen in a vacuum. It followed strict royal rules that have been shaped by years of public pressure and international scrutiny. Ever since 2003, the royal family has operated under updated gift guidelines. And they're clear. Be careful with anything extravagant, especially if it comes from a foreign government or a high-ranking official. Why? Because gifts like that can carry weight, whether it's political, cultural, or symbolic. For Catherine, the risks were clear. Accepting a £2 million sterling 0-pence necklace from a Saudi prince could easily raise questions about favoritism, influence, or hidden expectations. And beyond the protocol, there's the optics. Imagine what that would have looked like to the public, especially at a time when people in the UK are feeling the pinch of rising costs and economic pressure. A diamond necklace like that would have been impossible to explain no matter how well-intentioned it was. And Catherine knows this. Her image has always been built on being grounded, approachable, and in tune with the public mood. She's the royal who's just as likely to be photographed wearing a high street dress as she is stepping out in couture. She shows up to school drop-offs, chats with regular people at events, and often keeps the spotlight on her charity work instead of fashion headlines. So by choosing the shawl over the diamonds and by giving a thoughtful gift in return, she stayed completely aligned with the image she's built. And she also avoided a diplomatic IOU, because when a royal accepts a lavish gift, there's always that subtle undertone, what's expected in return? By keeping things culturally symbolic and financially modest, Catherine protected both her own neutrality and the monarchy.
Shaping Us is a long-term campaign, and we're starting by highlighting how we develop during early childhood and why these years matter so much.
So what does this say about Catherine, not just as a royal, but as the future queen? It tells us that she doesn't need headlines to make an impact. Her power is in the quiet moments, choosing a shawl that celebrates someone else's culture or sending a gift that reflects centuries of her own. It's not about flashy optics. It's about sending a message carefully, intentionally, and in a way that sticks. And that's exactly what Catherine represents in the royal family right now, a new kind of leadership. One that's respectful but firm, thoughtful but modern, and very much in touch with the world as it is. Her actions show a deep understanding of how to represent a country with grace. In a time where royal families across the globe are being questioned, she's reinforcing the monarchy's relevance, not with diamonds, but with diplomacy. She's showing that it's possible to hold tradition in one hand and modern values in the other. And the way she balances both, that's what sets her apart. It was never just about the necklace, it was about the message. And Catherine delivered it loud and clear. Now here's the question. What would you have done? Would you have accepted the necklace? Or do you think Catherine's move was the ultimate power play? Let me know your thoughts in the comments, and if you love stories like this, don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit that bell so you never miss a moment of behind-the-scenes royal drama.